Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another Transformers video here today, and we've got some more information about Rise of the Beasts and what went on behind the scenes leading up to the movie, some changes that were made to the script, and there's a bunch of new information that was released a few days ago, actually, at this point. I'm a little late to this, but still, there's so much information. I still wanted to just get a video out and cover it all, so I'm going to be reading through everything, breaking it down, and then we'll talk a little bit about it after the fact. Similar to the predecessor Bumblebee 2018, this film also went through a lot of changes. Many scenes and even some characters were deleted and others were added. Reports from 2022's test screenings suggest one alternate cut of the movie could have ran nearly 4 hours. And that's 2 hours longer than what we got. So imagine a whole 2 more hours worth of content that was shaved off this movie while they were working on it. That's just crazy to think about. But this has not been made, or this has not been officially confirmed, though. Some of the major changes between the test screenings and the theatrical cut include, and this is all the stuff that was left out or changed and shuffled around. Some of it made the movie, some of it didn't. But this is just all the stuff that did not make it between the test screenings and the final cut. So the opening scene that opens up the movie on the Maximal home planet was a late addition. Due to the CGI and budget limitations, the character Ape-Link is just a slightly altered 3D model of Optimus Primal's gorilla mode. But of course, if you saw my other video on that about Ape-Link, you would have known that Ape-Link was always just a reskin of Primal to sell toys. So they did it for the toys, they did it for the CGI in the movie. But the addition of this scene results in a continuity error, as the Maximal symbol that Scourge takes away from Ape-Link is missing for the rest of the movie. Stephen Caple Jr. said that the scene will be included on the DVD and Blu-ray as a bonus. A single Decepticon called Transit was set to appear, hiding in a bus yard. We already know about this all. Transit plays a hologram recording of the Autobots back on Cybertron being executed in Prime's absence, which would set up Prime's self-doubt for the rest of the movie, believing himself to be a failed leader. Prime then brutally kills Transit and dumps his body in a river, among other Decepticons that he has hunted down. Transit was a fully designed and animated CGI character who appears on promotional material. Remnants of the bus yard scene are seen in the movie and trailers, but Transit and his part in the plot were cut because it didn't fit in the storyline. So, before I continue, I've made videos covering the whole Transit thing, but here we get even more information revealing what was going to happen in that Transit scene. And like they said, we got parts from that in the trailer, and it was even still in the movie when we first see Optimus, when he transforms in that bus yard. I believe that was going to pick up shortly after, or that was the bus yard where Transit may have been hiding from. But of course, we saw the behind the scenes where like Optimus is driving down the street, Transit passes him. But now we find out that Transit was looking at a hologram of the Decepticons executing Autobots back on Cybertron. And man, I'm really disappointed that didn't make the final cut of the movie and they didn't include that, because we know Transit was done, so this was probably something that was done as well. So just imagine how cool that would be to see. And I think it would have done even more to further solidify the character growth and development that they chose to go with Optimus in this movie, as Optimus is definitely very bitter and to himself, because he does see himself as a failure or not that good of a leader. And this would have just been even more of a cherry on top of that if we got to see something like this. It's just like twisting the knife in Prime even more. So it really just, I think it would have just done more to help make us understand why Prime is so bitter and upset in this movie. But moving on, Peter Cullen recorded additional dialogue for Optimus Prime, including the introduction, "I am Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots, what is left of them." The plot point of Autobots losing numbers was toned down in the film. Yeah, definitely you could see that. But Optimus Primal and Air Razor had more dialogue in the teasers and trailers explaining who they are and warning the Autobots about Unicron. The idea that the Maximals came from the future using a transwarp technology is made more clear, while the final cut leaves it vague as time travel as a concept is not explained. So boom, another thing we can stop and talk about here. They do come from the future. Obviously, you know that if you know Beast Wars and the history of it. But they did leave that very ambiguous in the movie. They didn't explain it. They said a few times. I don't know if they said it a few times in the movie, but they said it, of course, all the times in the trailer. Pretty much, they say this is the greatest threat from your past and your future. They really emphasize the whole past and the future, present, past, future, that whole thing. But in the movie, they never explained that the Maximals use the transwarp key to come back from the future. So another thing, this movie, it really just suffered. Like, it was a movie that they took a lot of the meat off the bones. And the meat off the bones, I mean the runtime. They really, really, really scraped the runtime down on this movie. And at face value, it's still a good movie. It's still a fun movie. It's very enjoyable, very easy to follow. But a lot of this stuff that they cut out, probably because they thought it would make it too complicated, really just makes it unfortunate for us real Transformers fans that are looking for this small stuff to be added in, that they just shaved off, I guess, for runtime and complexity issues. But more scenes, more character development, all this stuff, it would have just gone to help the plot even more and honestly, I still feel like stuff like this would have just, I don't know, because I understand why they got rid of the whole time travel thing or didn't go too in depth with explaining it, because that definitely would have confused a lot of the casual moviegoers. But at the end of the day, I really wish they did go all in. If they're going to be doing this, where they brought in Unicron, Maximals, all this stuff, just go all in. You brought in Unicron and all this stuff. People are going to be confused if they don't know about it regardless. Just go all in. But moving on, Wheeljack. My second, other than the runtime, this is my biggest disappointment with this movie, Wheeljack. Wheeljack was meant to have a larger role. The van he turns into was seen on set in New York, but in the film he only appears in Peru. As we know, he only shows up in Peru. Both film posters and his action figures showed Wheeljack using a machine gun mounted on top of his van form, which was never in the film. Again, another thing which would have been cool. And then we hear this is something that was talked about. We heard about this a while ago with the test screenings. The test screening hinted at a possible romance between Wheeljack and RC with some sexual innuendos. So apparently Wheeljack makes a comment, because obviously RC is all like cramped up, sitting inside the back of Wheeljack when he's all transformed up with the humans in there as well in Peru. But apparently Wheeljack was going to make a comment about RC hasn't been quote-unquote inside him for a long time. But later Wheeljack comments that the gauntlet Mirage gave Noah, so like the little upgrade piece that turns into the suit. Well, it doesn't turn into the suit. Mirage turns into the suit. But the little upgrade piece that forms as a blaster apparently came from Mirage's ass. But both of the jokes got removed, thankfully. I mean, people didn't like those jokes in the Bay movies. Honestly, I could care less regardless, but probably better off that got removed. But honestly, it would have been kind of funny with the Wheeljack and RC thing. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of what happened with Wheeljack in this movie. But moving on, in an interview, Stephen Cable Jr. claimed there would be an explanation for why Wheeljack in this film looks nothing like his appearance in the Bumblebee movie. However, there's none, as Wheeljack's role is greatly diminished. Due to fan complaints about Wheeljack's design, small fins were added to the side of his head that pop up for a moment before the climactic battle, a nod to the classic design. The fins were absent in the test screening and in early trailers. One deleted scene, Wheeljack was lending his glasses to Prime. Okay, well, let's just touch before I continue, but yeah, the whole thing with the mirrors, I feel like if they had that as a permanent part of the design, people would not be as upset as they are. But because they had such a perfect design in the B movie, because they just completely redesigned his character and didn't completely redesign all of the other characters, like, yes, RC, B, and Prime all look a little bit different. We didn't see Mirage, of course. But overall, their designs are by and large the same. Like, they don't look different. You can still look at them and say, oh, that's RC, that's obviously B, that's obviously Prime. You look at Wheeljack and you say, who the hell is this guy? There's no distinguishable characteristics physically. Character-wise, there's no character traits that make him seem like Wheeljack. And they just gave him an accent for the purpose of making a joke about robot racism. So they literally just, his character, his only purpose was for a joke. And for, I guess, for for hiding inside of him because he's a van. So, moving on. I'm also very glad that they did not have a scene where Optimus Prime puts on glasses, because that would have just been goofy. But the Maximals had alternate dialogue. Cheetor called Optimus Primal Big Bot in a nod to his common nickname. Wow, that's just disappointing. But in his common nickname from Beast Wars, Rhinox said "for home" as the Maximals and Autobots prepared for battle, prompting Noah to respond with "you can talk." These lines were cut. Others were added. Optimus Primal explains that he was named in honor of Optimus Prime. Airrazor's death had less dialogue. In the finished film, she begs Primal to kill her to get rid of the infection. Okay, so honestly, glad they got rid of that Airrazor part. I feel like that would have been like a little bit too much, a little I don't think overdone, but a little bit like a crazy dramatic tone shift out of nowhere. Well, obviously there were some like scary, tense moments. Well, I don't want to say scary, but like some tense moments of high action, high stakes throughout the movie. But that would have been pretty dark when you have two friends that were just reunited after a long time. They've been through a lot together. They share an intense history. They're going through a stressful time right now. They're trying to help the humans and protect everything. One of them gets corrupted, and then the other one has to choke them out and crush their chest in to kill them. And it would have been pretty crazy if Airrazor was begging her for pretty much begging for her to be killed off. That would have been pretty crazy. But the Big Bot thing, extremely disappointed that got cut. That would have been awesome to see, and an awesome little Easter egg. And the whole thing with Rhinox, don't even get me started. That's another one of my biggest complaints. Rhinox doesn't have a single line of dialogue throughout this. And this, honestly, I would have been happy with this, because at least I would have been like, at least they addressed it. It's better than, at least they didn't go the whole movie saying nothing. But that's exactly what we got. But moving on, the scene of Bumblebee engaging Scourge at the museum has at least two versions. The first teaser showed Optimus Prime lying beside Scourge as he stabbed Bumblebee. The full trailer added Battletrap stepping on Optimus to keep him down, explaining why he couldn't get up to help Bumblebee. The finished movie uses the teaser scene while Optimus is lying on the ground. Scourge had more dialogue hinting at his past life, explaining that he too tried to stop Unicron before Unicron enslaved him. When Scourge's mask is knocked off, it was meant to be revealed as one of Unicron's former victims. The reveal was cut from the film, so when Scourge loses his mask and shows his real face, it has no significance. So, I didn't have a problem with how Scourge was in the movie. I didn't have the biggest... I do have to say, I was a bit disappointed that he didn't have more background, because Stephen Cable in interviews was talking about how he wanted his villains to be deep and be layered villains, and he wanted these characters to be pretty much be deep layered characters, and Scourge just was a pretty much just typical bad guy, pretty enforcer of the big bad guy, didn't really have too much behind him. But I feel like this, again, really would have just helped give him more of a background. Like, even if he's not some big significant character, it gives it more of a background, more of a meaning, and it just would have made that whole thing with the mask coming off a little bit cooler, rather than it just being, oh, well, he's got an ugly face. But then we move on to a scene that was unfortunately cut. It was showed off in a bunch of promo photos of Optimus ramming Scourge. Optimus Prime ramming Scourge in truck form was cut. The scene was filmed using actual trucks to perform a dangerous stunt, and it even showed up, like I just said, on posters, but it's not in the actual film. Aside from a few quick shots, almost all of the scenes of the three Terracons in their vehicle forms were cut, and it is not explained why they disguised themselves as Earth vehicles to begin with. Test screening attendees suggest that there was a scene of them scanning vehicles, which is not in the finished film. Stratosphere has additional screen time in the theatrical cut. In the test screening, he only transformed into robot mode near the end. And that's another thing. Like, why was Stratosphere even in the movie? Other than, like, to get them there. But they could have literally just done a normal cargo plane. Stratosphere doesn't help at all in the final battle. All he does is fly them there, say, Energon, and then drive Bumblebee in so he could do his Battle Royale entrance. He does nothing in the movie. He doesn't help them at all. And then he throws up. Those are the only things he does. And so that's pretty interesting to hear. Then in the test screenings, he did even less. So Moving on, when Mirage turns into a garbage truck, this is one I've heard people complain about. The test screening made it clear he was using his hologram ability to appear larger. In the final cut, Mirage seemingly grows in size to become a garbage truck. See, when I was watching the movie, I thought about this too, and when you look at it, the truck itself is a completely different color than the front cab. So I was just under the assumption that Mirage was transformed into the front cab, and then like using his hologram to make the back of the truck. So I guess they did a better job making that clear in the theatrical or in the pre-screenings, and they just thought it would be obvious enough for people to put two and two together, especially after the fairly recently earlier scene of Mirage showing the other holograms. But I guess people couldn't process, like, oh yeah, he can do other holograms too. But again, that is just a minor thing. I don't think that's anything too significant. Next, Elena talking to herself, thinking this is all a dream, then realizing Autobots are real as RC waves her hand. Yep, we saw that in a bunch of the trailers. Like, this isn't real, and then she looks over and RC waves. That got cut. I'm glad that got cut, because RC kind of looked a little weird in that shot too. It didn't really look like the same RC model we see throughout the movie. But Rhinox roaring, another thing that was cut, another thing that was in the trailers, Rhinox in the underground cave roaring, which was seen in the very first teaser, that was also cut. The dialogue between Noah and Mirage from the trailers, how big can this guy be? He eats planets, so way bigger than a planet, yet that was cut from Mirage. And Mirage's sacrifice at the end was meant to be final. The theatrical cut added the bonus mid-credit scene where we see him, or we see Noah rebuild him with other car parts and then transform, and he's okay. I'm actually glad that they didn't kill him off, although I'm surprised nobody died. I'm glad that they didn't kill Mirage. I would have had no problem if they went and killed that boy Wheeljack, because I feel like nobody would have cared. I think somebody should have died, because like AirRazor dying was very predictable, and it didn't really have a major impact because she just showed up, helped out a little bit, and then gets killed off, and it's not really the most emotionally invested death compared to, let's just say, Wheeljack were to get killed, or if they just brought in, or even if Stratosphere gets killed. I mean, at least he's like an old guy, so you could feel some sympathy for him, and he helped them out in a bigger way. But and the B death thing, that obviously that was very predictable. So I mean, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, that you can't have these multiple fake deaths and all this stuff. So at the end of it, I wish they would have just had it be someone else other than Mirage. But I'm glad Mirage was revived in the end. I think that was a good decision overall. But let me know what you guys think. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in here, a lot of stuff to speculate about, a lot of changes they ended up making, which is truly very interesting. This could have been a very different movie, and I think a lot of these changes, honestly, would have made this movie even better. And like I said, I'm still a fan of this movie. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. And I think this movie could have been like a 9 or a 9.5. This easily could have been, in my eyes, the best Transformers movie if it was like half an hour longer. They were saying there was 2 more hours that rumored. The potential, one of the cuts of this movie was 4 hours long. I feel like they could have gotten away with 2 hours, 40 minutes of Transformers. There's a lot of characters in this. There's a lot to go over. And at the end of it, it was good, but it did feel a little hollow in some parts when it comes to characters, development, some story that was lacking. But again, really interesting just to speculate about, and also cool to think about because it does make me have a little bit more faith in Stephen Caple going into the sequel that he is more than likely going to get. Because if this was all stuff that he was trying to get into the movie, I don't think it's on him that a lot of it got scraped out. Most of the time that's coming from the higher-ups that are trying to work with the optics of the movie, and they force it down with runtime or stuff like that. But we'll just have to wait and see with the sequel. I'd expect a sequel within, I don't think we're going to have to wait 3 years. I'm guessing within 2 years. So I'll definitely be posting all news, any updates and stuff leading up to that. Also, the new Transformers game, Reactivate, I'll be covering that. And Transformers 1, we're getting an animated movie next year. So what am I talking about? But let me know what you guys think about this stuff in the comments down below. Likes, dislikes, anything is appreciated. And until next time, peace.